After buying and rebuilding an old car, the car takes over a nerd and now decides to go after those who mistreated him, revealing that it is a monstrous vehicle. In an automobile factory in the 1950s, a line of Plymouth Fury prototype cars is being completed. However, one of them stands out. A red model being inspected by a worker. Unfortunately for him, while inspecting the engine, the hood door closes by itself and crushes his hand. As he goes to treat the wound, another employee checks the inside of the car and drops his cigar ash on the seat. Hours pass and the factory is done. Everyone leaves, but the supervisor notices the car's red lights are on and goes to check, only to find the employee's body with the cigar. Decades later, in 1978, a student named Dennis drives up to the home of Arie, a nerdy, goofy guy. Despite their different personalities, the two become best friends and make their way to the first day of school. There, they collect supplies from their lockers until a new student, Lee, has shown up and is captivating everyone with her beauty. Later, Dennis waits for Arie to eat lunch, but discovers that his friend is being harassed by Buddy, the class bully. When he hears about this, he runs into the school workshop just as Buddy grabs Arnie's lunch and threatens him with a knife. Dennis tries to intervene, but the bully throws the lunch on the floor, causing Arie to slip on it. The fall causes Arie to lose his glasses, and Buddy not only does that, he smashes them with his foot. The bully laughs at the whole situation, but Dennis takes advantage of his distraction and disarms him with a kick, followed by a straight punch to the face. At the same moment, the rest of the gang attacks Dennis, only for one of the teachers to arrive at the workshop and tell them to stop. He quickly becomes suspicious of Buddy and Arie confirms that he threatened them with a knife, but Buddy denies everything. The teacher forces the bully to empty his pockets and then shows him the penknife he had been hiding. As a result, he and his entourage are sent to the office. Buddy ends up getting expelled from school, while his friends are sent to detention. At the end of the day, Dennis and Arie talk about what happened, until the young geek sees a car in front of a house and asks Dennis to stop. They go there and find a red Plymouth Fury, the same car from the factory accident, but it is quite old and badly maintained. Arie doesn't mind and becomes obsessed with the car, until its owner old George Leby shows up. He says the car is called Christine, and that it belonged to his brother who died a few weeks ago. Because of this, the old man wants to get rid of the car as soon as possible and puts it up for sale for $250. Dennis advises his friend not to buy such a wrecked car, but Arie closes the deal without hesitation. When evening comes, the young man returns home and tells his parents about his purchase, but his strict mother is completely against the idea and asks him to get rid of the car. The young man refuses because he does enough to please his parents and bought the car with his own savings. However, his mother remains adamant about her decision, prompting the young man to leave the house and take the car to a garage with Dennis. There they are met by the mechanic's owner, a grumpy old man named Will, who treats the young men rudely. Despite this, he allows the young men to keep the car overnight, then tells them to go home. On the way back, Dennis asks Arie why he bought a dilapidated car like Christine. The young man replies that he finally found something as ugly as himself, but that it could be made into something better if he put his mind to it. Weeks pass and Arie works day and night to fix the car. The garage owner is rude, but decides to hire the young man to help him in the garage, and in return, Arie will be able to pick up all the scrap metal he needs for his car. The young man accepts the offer and continues to work on the car, not realizing that, in some mysterious way, he is becoming more and more attached to Christine. The next day, Dennis and two other friends talk about the new student, and he challenges him to go and talk to her in the library. The young man accepts the challenge, but when he sits down at Lee's table and asks her out, the girl tells him she already has a date. Dennis leaves the table embarrassed by the rejection, and at the end of the day, he goes to Arnie's house to talk, as they haven't seen each other much. But when he gets there, Arie is different, without his glasses, with more elegant clothes and a rebellious mood. He doesn't even want to talk to his friend and immediately leaves to do some extra work for the store owner. His mother tries to stop him, but the young man ignores her and continues on his way. She then talks to Denise and says she's worried about her son and his new car, as she found out that the previous owner committed suicide inside the car by inhaling carbon monoxide. Upon hearing this, Dennis goes to George's old house and reveals what happened to his brother. The man says that when he bought Christine, his brother became obsessed with the car, even after his daughter and wife lost their lives in it. To make matters worse, after his brother's death, the car mysteriously showed up at George's house weeks later. This makes Dennis even more anxious, and at the end of the day, he decides to go to the garage to take a look at the car. When he gets there, he tries to get into the car, but as soon as he pulls the handle, the radio starts playing and Dennis runs away before anyone sees him. The next morning, the young man goes to the school playground to play a soccer game. Dennis is preparing for an important move, but in the distance, he sees Arie arriving with Christine, fully restored, which attracts the attention of Buddy and his friends. In addition, Lee appears from inside the car and she and Arie kiss in front of everyone. Dennis is confused and upset when he sees this and loses his focus on the game. Unfortunately, an opposing player takes advantage of this and takes the ball from him with a hit so strong that it knocks him unconscious and seriously injures him. Days pass after this incident and Dennis wakes up in the hospital with his leg in a cast and his neck broken. Beside him stands Arie, who has come to check on his friend, and the two resume their old friendship. Dennis reveals that because of what happened in the game, he will never be able to play football again and is almost paralyzed. He also asks how Arie was able to fix Christine in such a short period of time, but his friend simply says that he worked hard to do it. However, the tone of the conversation soon changes and Arie tells him that he had his parents register the car in his name or he would have to drop out of school. Dennis notices that his friend has changed a lot and that something bad seems to be growing inside him. However, Arie says goodbye to Dennis, and when evening comes, he takes Lee to a movie theater. The two have a romantic moment, but when things start to escalate, Lee backs off and gets out of the car. Arie follows her and the girl says she doesn't want to spend those moments in the car. Furthermore, the two start arguing about the fact that the young man is obsessed with Christine and pays more attention to her than his girlfriend. He finds this conversation ridiculous and convinces Lee to get in the car because of the rain. The girl agrees, but as soon as they get inside, the windshield starts to crack and Arie gets out to try to fix it. At that moment, Lee grabs a snack to eat and the car turns on the radio by itself. And if that wasn't weird enough, a bright light comes from the dashboard and the girl starts to feel nauseous, as if she's choking. She starts to run out of air and Arie immediately runs to help her, but the car starts up again and the doors lock from the inside. The young man gets desperate and tries to open the door any way he can, but to no avail. Fortunately, Lee, who was already out of control, manages to pull the door lock and a driver standing next to her manages to open it. When he saw this, Arie went into a rage and attacked the man, but the man just wanted to help her get the food stuck in the girl's throat out, and he succeeded. After this strange situation, Arie takes Lee home, but the girl quickly gets out of the car and doesn't want to talk. However, he tries to apologize, but Lee somehow says that it was the car that did this to her. Not only that, she feels like Christine is jealous of Arie, as something weird always happens when the two are together. Once again, the young man thinks it's all crazy on his girlfriend's part and promises that they'll talk about it the next day. Arie then gets back in the car, but he can't start it. Instinctively, the young man tries to talk to Christine and tells her that what happened to Lee won't change anything and that she still will be his car. After that, he tries to start it again and this time the car starts again. The two then return to the garage and Arie leaves Christine there, but before he knows it, Buddy and his posse sneak in. After the young man leaves, the thugs go to Christine's and, armed with sledgehammers, begin to completely destroy the car. One of the thugs not only destroys the body of the car, but also starts to tear out the seats and destroy the radio. The next day, Arie and Lee reconcile and go to the garage together so the young man can get his wallet out of the car. However, when they get there, Arie is shocked to see Christine completely devastated. Lee asks who did this and tries to support her boyfriend, but Arie can't control his anger and forces her to leave. Later, during dinner, the young man tells his parents what happened and they try to comfort him, saying they will help him buy a new car. However, this only makes Arie even more angry because he knows that his parents and Lee never liked Christine. What's more, he blames them for what happened because if they had let him park his car in the garage, none of this would have happened. After saying a lot of rude things to his parents, Arie leaves the table and goes to his room, but his father comes to him and asks him to apologize to his mother. The young man continues his rebellious behavior, forcing his father to take physical action, only for Arie to strike back and nearly take his father's life. Hours pass and the young man is still obsessed with Christine. He returns to the workshop and decides to fix it piece by piece, until it is exactly as it was before. However, he is surprised to see the car, in a supernatural way, repair its engine on its own. Astonished, Arie asks Christine to show him what she can do next, and the car then begins to completely restore itself, without any effort. Later, in the middle of the road, one of Buddy's henchmen, nicknamed Machi, gets into a truck and stops in front of a highway. The young man continues on his way until he hears the sound of a car engine in the distance. As he approaches, he meets Christine, who enters the road and stops in front of the young man. The young man is frightened and suspects that Arie is inside and tries to justify what he did, but the car turns on its headlights and speeds towards him. Machi runs as fast as he can and manages to jump out of a jam before the car hits him. He thinks he has lost the car, but Christine shows up shortly after and chases him. The young man continues to run and jumps out of a gate leading to an old warehouse. He then runs into a narrow alley, but right behind him appears Christine, who is slowly chasing him, as if enjoying the whole thing. Finally, the young man finds himself trapped with no way out, and the car right in front of him is waiting for him. With nowhere to go, he pulls out his pocket knife and threatens the driver, but Christine starts to advance, and despite the alley being very narrow, she makes her way through and crushes the young man. The next morning, Arie goes to Dennis' room and tells him what happened to Machi. Dennis finds this suspicious and finds it strange that Christine has returned to normal after being torn to pieces. However, Arie ignores it and leaves. On his way out, Detective Jenkins approaches the young man, saying he is investigating who wrecked his car, as well as the death of Machi, who was found dismembered. Arie says he knows nothing about the young man's elimination, though he is pleased with the news. The detective begins to suspect the young man, revealing that he overheard his girlfriend Lee's testimony about what happened to the car and how, strangely, it was restored. This is the last straw for the young man, who loses his patience and leaves without reporting anything else. Later, he calls Lee and tries to convince her to meet him, but the girl refuses, which further angers Arie. Meanwhile, at a convenience store, Buddy and his friend have some drinks and drive off down the road. Halfway through, a car with its headlights on begins to chase them. Buddy stops the car to see who it is, but the headlights block his view. He tries to get away from the car by backing up, only for the car to do the same, revealing it to be Christine. Annoyed, Buddy speeds down the road until he stops at a gas station where his friend Richie works. He gets out of the car, pulls out a piece of iron and prepares to confront whoever is following him. Suddenly, Christine appears at high speed and without hesitation, slams head-on into Buddy's car, completely tearing the side of the car apart. The bully suspects that Arie is inside and challenges him to confront him. However, Christine again rushes towards Buddy's car, but this time pushes it into the workshop. At that moment, Dawn is inside and is pushed with the car and smashed against the wall. As if that wasn't enough, the wrecked car starts leaking gasoline, and the fuel gets on Richie's feet. Eventually, Buddy's car catches fire, and when it comes into contact with the gasoline, the entire garage explodes, taking Richie with it. Seeing this tragedy, Buddy runs for his life, but Christine emerges from the garage covered in flames and sets off to finish off her latest victim. In the middle of the dark and deserted road, the burning car saw Buddy running as far as he could. Finally, the giant car ran over its victim, leaving only the body lying on the road covered in flames. After a while, Old Will heard a car approaching, and when he opened the doors of his workshop, he found Christine covered in smoke. The old man found this strange, as Arie had gone in his car to do his job, so he armed himself with a gun and went to Christine to see who was driving the car. The old man approached and tried to open the door, but the whole body was extremely hot. He uses an old rag to open it, but there is no one inside. This makes everything strange, but despite this, the man decides to enter the car to investigate. Christine takes advantage of this mistake to avoid leaving any witnesses, and in addition to trapping the old man in the car, she crushes him by pushing the seat against the dashboard. The next day, Arie returns to the garage and finds several police cars inside. Upon entering, he encounters Detective Jenkins, who tells him that he found his boss inside the car, motionless. The strangest thing of all is that the situation appears to be a suicide, as his gun was with him in the car. Confronted with this, Arie says he doesn't know what happened, but suspects it was Christine, who once again appears to be completely back to normal. Meanwhile, Dennis returns home and receives a call from Lee, who asks to speak to him. She goes there and says she suspects the car is somehow controlling Arie to make him act so strangely and violently. Dennis doesn't believe his friend is capable of anything bad, but if the car is controlling his mind, it needs to be destroyed. After the conversation, Lee leaves, but seconds later, Arie shows up with Christine. He calls Dennis to take them for a drive, but Arie is again acting very strangely. On the way, he starts drinking more than he should, speeds, and even takes his hands off the wheel and lets the car drive itself. This makes Dennis anxious, and he repeats Lee's words that Arie is not in control of his car. But instead of listening to his friend, the young man threatens him that nothing and no one will stand in his way with Christine. To prove it, Arie increases his top speed and swerves into another lane, nearly hitting the oncoming car. When Dennis sees that his friend is going crazy, he leaves a notice on the body of Christine's car the next day, asking Arie to meet him at the garage in the evening. When the time comes for the meeting, Dennis and Lee are waiting for him at the workshop, but Arie is not there. So they get on a nearby excavator and drive it to the workshop. The two agree that Lee will stay in the office and close the gate when Arie arrives. And once he leaves, Dennis will bulldoze Christine. They go ahead with the plan and the girl goes to the office, but what neither of them knows is that Christine has been hiding in the workshop, amidst a lot of rubble. The car then turns on its headlights and sets off to run over the girl who, in a reflex action, grabs onto a hanging tire and avoids it in the nick of time. However, Christine doesn't give up and sets off to attack her again, only for Dennis to put the excavator's claw in front of her and protect her from impact. Christine then backs up and goes to the far side of the workshop, while Dennis drives the tractor to the other side. The two vehicles are placed opposite each other, and it is revealed that Christine is not driving alone, but with the help of Arie, who is completely dominated by her influence. Suddenly, the car activates its headlights, and within seconds, it completely fixes itself. To make matters worse, the excavator stops working and Dennis tries to restart it. Meanwhile, the car speeds towards the office to eliminate Lee once and for all. The girl gets desperate and the car crashes into everything, but instead of hitting her, the car hits Arie through the windshield. The girl goes to see what happened to him and Arie scares her with a jump and catches her off guard. Unfortunately, his body is fatally injured by a piece of glass in the windshield. In his final moments, Arie tries to caress his precious car, but is unable to resist his injuries and dies in front of Christine. Unable to do anything else, Lee flees the scene, but Christine, in a final act of revenge, retreats to attempt to hit the girl. At the last moment, Lee manages to swerve and the car gets stuck in a pole. Dennis takes this opportunity, and after reactivating the excavator, he drives it towards Christine. The blow hits her hard, but the car resists and tries to escape. Christine charges at Lee, but Dennis uses the excavator's claw and rams the car from behind. With that blow, the crazy car seems to lose its power and become disabled. Lee rushes to the excavator to join Dennis, but Christine reactivates and begins rebuilding again. So to put an end to the evil once and for all, Dennis starts the bulldozer and runs over Christine, who tries to fight back, but is completely crushed. The fight is finally over and the next day, Dennis and Lee meet Detective Jenkins in the middle of a junkyard. There they find Christine reduced to compressed scrap metal. The danger seems to be over, except that the three hear a song, very similar to the one the car was playing on the radio. Luckily, it's from one of the junkyard workers. Finally, the three leave, but they don't notice when a small piece of Christine starts moving, proving that the demon car is still alive.